Welcome everybody to TruExact Show. I'm here with Eric, Brian, Dan, and our guest tonight is comic book writer and publisher of Iron Age Comics, Jon Santana. How you doing, man? Hope you're staying safe during this time.
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. You?
Awesome. I can't speak for anybody else, so if you want to do a round table, Dan, how you doing?
I'm pretty good today.
Brian?
What's up, Dan?
Fantastic.
Eric?
Hey, Brian.
I spilled curry soup in my car, so I've been better.
I would imagine. By the way, funny story, and I love the fact that your car got ruined, but we'll talk about that later. Jon, so you're into comic books, you're a publisher of the comics. I've read the comics. They're pretty cool. They're awesome. The drawings are amazing. But before we get into the actual stories, I want to ask you your backstory, how you got into comics. Go, man.
Yeah, so, I mean, I've been into comics ever since I was a little kid. G.I. Joe was the first comic my uncle ever got me when I was 7 years old, and I was hooked ever since then. I started off as like a Marvel kid, but pretty early on, since my dad was a DC head, like my dad didn't even tell me that he was into comics until after 3 years I was collecting. And he sees me reading Spider-Man, he sees me reading Avengers, and he's like, what's up with that? Where's Superman?
He's like, let me hand you the good stuff.
Yeah. So he starts dropping some DC comics on me. And then I just had to voraciously read everything, you know. And funny thing is, in middle school and high school, I thought I was the only one. I didn't think anybody else was reading comics. So I thought I knew everything. I thought I was the guru. If anybody had any sort of interest in X-Men, if I heard the name X-Men, I just jump in and show how much of a nerd I was. I had no shame. And I found out pretty quick that there was a lot of people in the 90s, you know, when I was in high school, into comics too, you know, coming out of the comics closet, because back then it wasn't cool to be a nerd at all.
Right.
Comics were not cool. So, you know, we would get together in cliques and talk comics and everything. And then early on, I would say in 9th grade, I wrote my first comic and I drew, I want to say like 5-6 pages myself, which was really, really hard to do. I thought I was a really good artist, but I never put the time and effort in it to be a great artist. But I love writing the stories. So I think my favorite rapper was Redman at the time in the 90s. That year, I think it was like 91.
Shout out
and
Jersey.
I made a, huh?
Shout out to New Jersey.
Yeah, shout out Jersey.
Brick City.
I decided my first comic character would be Redman, and I just, you know, made something crazy, really violent. You know, I remember I drew this picture of the character just like, for some reason, fighting this panther and ripping it open, blood and guts everywhere. So I think I knew early on that I was going to write some violent-oriented action stuff. So that's where it started, man. That's where the bug bit me.
Nice. I know I'm going to hand this to Brian really quick because he's like to me, the comic book guru. Brian, if you got anything, go for it, man.
Shit, I mean, when it comes, I mean, I'm a huge DC fan over Marvel. Is there any, what really stood out to you that kind of showed the difference between DC and Marvel in general? Like, what was one big thing that stood out to you that separated the two of them?
Well, I'll just talk early on. Like first impressions when I was a kid is there was something, you know, I couldn't have expressed it this way when I was a kid, but there's something grandiose about the Justice League. There was something mythical. You know, it felt almost biblical. The level of storytelling, reading about Superman. Even as a kid, I recognized history there. Maybe because, you know, I'd seen Christopher Reeve on screen, and there was something at the time more ground level for Marvel for me, something I felt like I could relate to. And I couldn't really, you couldn't have asked me as a kid, I wouldn't have been able to answer this way. But just looking back, just in my memory, I just felt like maybe because Peter Parker was a teenager, I just felt like I connected more to Marvel at the time. But I still read Superman and Batman and Justice League. At the time, Justice League was what was that artist's name? Kevin Nolan? The one, no, Kevin Maguire for that Justice League, the Justice League International run. Yeah. Where it was all goofy and comedy. And then Batman would just come in and straighten everybody's faces. You know, he was all serious. And I always loved that about that. The dynamic of that. Yeah, so I would say that that's the difference. There was like a mythical, godlike quality of the characters in DC, and I was just more grounded for Marvel for me.
How did you said? I want to go back to when you started. You said you were a good artist. You didn't take the time to be the great artist. Did you focus more then on writing the comics than drawing the actual illustrations? How did you like, go into that? Did you find yourself as a better writer than drawer? So you're like, all right, this is the lane I want to take.
Right. It's funny because that went into college for me, and I'll get to that in a second. So I just found that I spent more time writing, and I would find myself, I've written issue 3 of a comic book before I even finished drawing issue 1. And I thought, well, that must be where my love lies, you know, and I want to put more time and effort into that. When I went to college, I wanted to go to film school. I actually did go to film school, SUNY Purchase, New York. They have a theater arts and film program. And so I went to film school thinking I was going to go into the directing program. And it was a pretty tight list. Every year they only had like 10 or 12 students. And so I went there, and the director's like, so show me some films you made. And I said, oh, well, I haven't made any yet. I just think I'll be a great filmmaker. And he goes, but you've handed me a couple of scripts. Where's the film? You haven't shot anything. And I'm like, yeah, well, I can turn these scripts into movies. And he's like, you're a writer. This is what you love doing. This is what you brought here to the film program to interview. You brought scripts. You didn't bring anything visual. And that's when it hit me. Like, that's my love. That's my strength. That's where I go. So I kind of pulled away from the visual stuff and went all in on the writing, and found that I was good at it. I loved it. I did great in school, did a couple of plays in school. And I always knew that comics was going to be a part of my future. Even though I thought I was going to get into animation, right out of college, I started an animation project that everything looked like it was going to go well. Didn't end up working out because, young guy coming into trying to do animation out of nowhere. I got some people to invest a lot of money, but project still went, up.
Right.
So
I would love to know how hard is it a ground to break into the comic book? Like, I don't know much about that whole area. Like, is it cutthroat? Is it very like it? Let's be honest. You got your 2 monsters. It's like you got Marvel, DC. It's like Coke and Pepsi, and you got like the RC Cola, the Sam's Choice. Like, what does it take to just bust through there? You
don't know how much of a loaded question that is in 2020. COVID aside, comics is crazy right now. So back when I started in 2011, all right, that's when I first started working on Jaded. Okay, back when I started in 2011, there was only one choice. Kickstarter was brand new.
Right.
Independent comics, you had to break in. Like, you still had to get into Image or one of the smaller independent companies. Or if you wanted to create a company yourself, like I did, you had to hit one company, distributor called Diamond Distributors. They were the monopoly, like government sanctioned, literally. They got taken to court because they were the only authorized distributor for Marvel, DC, and Image. Really the only comic sales giants out there. That's it. They all went through this one place, Diamond Distributors. So I worked with Diamond, and they just don't care about the littlest little guy. They just don't care. They didn't care how good the product was. They wanted to know business. And I didn't know anything about business. I went to school for writing, and I put together art with a lot of great artists. And they're like, what's your business model? I said, I don't know how to spell business model. So I did some studying, and I worked on a business plan and everything, and I realized there was sort of a mark on me from Diamond. Every time I would submit a plan to them, they were just like, this guy again. So over the years, I started saying, I just want to focus on the product. I'll make the best product that I can make and figure out how to break into that part of the industry. The one door that there was available, Diamond Distributor, I'll figure that out later. First, let me work on the product. And I wanted to get myself to 6 issues. So I have one trade paperback, this one right here, Jaded. All right, this is a very long dream it took me to get to the whole thing, especially without being able to sell anything through Diamond, which is the largest and only distributor in the nation.
That is really, I'm sorry to cut you off, that's the only comic book distributor in the fucking country?
Until 2020. Okay.
Okay, so up until
since the beginning? Since
the beginning?
Right. So not since forever. I want to say in the 90s, and I wish I could give you the exact history. All I know is that in the 90s, when Marvel imploded, they got bought by Toy Biz, and they started going in a different direction. Both Marvel and DC made a deal with Diamond Distributors, and everybody else either went out of business or got pushed out of business. So all there was with that one distributor since 1991, I want to say. Okay, I mean, you can fact check me on that. I'm sure.
So they did what like Vince McMahon did to wrestling. Like,
yes.
He took over ECW, WC, and that was it. Like,
and that was it. So because I was just a little guy and I was just a creator, and I wasn't into, especially since I had a full-time job, I had a family. I didn't have time to dive in to figure out how to build the business from the ground up. So I said, let me just make the product and make the product good. And then Kickstarter started developing over the years. And I said, this is a business model that could work. There's revenue involved. There's a customer base you can go to and keep feeding them more issues of the comic and build a base that way. So that's what my plan was. That's what I did. And I ended up coming up with some other comic book projects. Everhounds, Wordsmith, was able to complete those. They were successful. They were each one-shots, but I kept working on Jaded until it was complete. So just to get to the 2020 thing again, because I'm sure that everybody's interested in that. So DC was bought by AT&T. Well, DC and everything, Time Warner was bought by AT&T. I want to say, what was it, early last year, 2019?
Yeah.
And the first thing that AT&T is looking at is revenue for DC. And like, comic books don't make any money, not compared to the movie properties, not compared to the DVD sales, not compared to every other version of Batman and Superman, any other way over Lego and licensing. The comic books don't make as much. So they were kicking around just shutting down DC Comics. So that's what everybody thought was coming. Then COVID hit. The comic book industry took a nosedive, the whole industry, because they couldn't even distribute comic books. And DC decided, you know what? We're going to come up with our own plan and just distribute comics ourselves. So they created a second route, a second avenue. And I don't want to get into politics of it because there's politics involved. You can look them up. One of the distributors on the East Coast for DC is a retailer. So there's a little bit of conflict of interest there. The reason I bring this all up is now we're starting to see the gap open up. Now there's two distributors. Actually, the second distributor is DC itself. It uses two, one on each coast, the East and the West Coast. And then you've got Diamond. So the distribution of comics is fractured right now. Independent comics don't even use the distributors. Independent comics, guys like me, we use Kickstarter as a distributor. We can go direct to the consumer with our product. We don't have to pay the overhead to these distributors. We're not as big as Marvel, DC, Image, Boom, Dynamite. Right. So we can make more bang for our buck direct to the consumer. So that's a model that works for many comic creators like myself. And that's what I'm going to continue doing, direct to consumer until somebody decides they want to buy it.
But it's like an independent music artist. At this point, you're almost better off because there's more avenues since 2011 to get yourself out there no matter what. You don't even need a big guy. Like, why sign a deal with, like, Atlantic Records if you're getting 10 million views yourself? You know, why pay the overhead? So, like, nah, that's really, honestly, that's fucking great intel. I did not know that went on in the comic world. But then again, the world's politics. Dan, you got a question?
Yeah, so, like, what challenges, especially, like, with, like, self-publishing, did you, like, run into that you didn't think were going to happen? Like, did you think it was just going to be, like, an easy, like, route just to, like, have your own creativity and your own ownership over everything?
I think that's a great question. I think the biggest challenge working with great artists is that they're independent, too. And if you don't lock them down, they're going to go work elsewhere. I have a great example. Actually, hold on one second. I'm going to grab the visual to show you. Hold on.
He never returned.
That was a great question. Let me get the fuck out of here.
Comes back dressed as
Okay, sorry about that. I'm back. So this is the cover to Jaded #1 now. All right. This is the cover I released in 2016, I want to say, maybe even 2017 for the first time. I think it's 2016. The original cover of Jaded #1, this is 2011, my first version, right? I went to New York Comic Con. This is a New York Comic Con exclusive. If you look at page #1 in Jaded #1, or I'm sorry, page number like 3 in Jaded #1 versus page number 3 in Jaded, the current one. So this is 2011. This is 2016. Completely different artist. This guy, this cartoony style.
Yeah.
What I didn't know when I picked that kid up is that he was a kid. He was a child. I met him over the internet. I saw his work. I loved it. The guy was 17 years old.
Okay.
The guy was 17 years old. I had no idea.
I thought you met an 8-year-old on the internet. I was like,
he was 17, but he didn't tell me that. His work was outstanding. He designed all the characters. And he's like, oh, I'm sick. I'm sorry the pages are late. And I gave him 2, 3 chances. I'm like, man, I need these pages. What are you doing?
I'm sick. I'm sick. I'm sick. I'm sick. All right, what do you need? Flintstone vitamins. How old are you?
I had no idea. So I fire the kid, right?
That's phenomenal.
2 years later, I see a Venom comic book with his name in it.
Oh my God.
Completely different style. By the time he was 19, this kid had risen to superstar level. Now he's drawing Marvel comics all the time. He's drawing Venom, some Carnage stuff. He's drawing Angela, Avengers, Thor. This kid.
Wow.
So the point being is
you toughened him up, man.
Things. Yeah, right. That's
it's like I'm
one of the hardest things is holding on. Is holding on to the talent, holding on to the talent that you have, and being able to have a schedule with these guys who are good enough to get a knock on the door or a phone call from Marvel or DC and say, hey, you want to work for us? They just drop you. And they go work, even if you're paying them well, they go work because they want to work on Batman. Jimbo, who did the new version of Jaded #1, he did Jaded numbers 1 through 3. He did Batman Arkham Asylum comics. He's done Transformers.
Really?
So it's great working with these guys. It's hard to keep them on the schedule with you. So I ended up working with a guy who was lesser known, who's an amazing talent, who finished the series Jaded 3 through 6, and he's just been phenomenal. Jamar Bulda. If you saw the later comics in the series, they were all Jamar Bulda, and he's just amazing. He's going to get picked up.
How does that work as far as like royalties? Like you did 1 through 3 with one artist, 3 through 6 with another. How does that work? How is that a contractual thing? So what you sell 1 through 3, he gets, or is there like a every hand in the pot type thing?
That's a good question. So the contracts that I happened to work out had no royalties because I don't have a system in place to be able to track sales to that level. I'm the little guy. I want to say that again and again. The money I make does not go in my pocket. The money I make from sales of comics goes into printing and selling more comics because I'm just trying to build a brand. And these artists know that. So I pay them a flat rate, and that's why I pay them a really good flat rate. That's why I'm competitive, and that's why they want to come back to me. So I pay them a good rate up front. They know that there's no royalties. They'll get comp comics. They'll get their name mentioned. They get to use the work that they do with me to showcase their work and get picked up as they've done in the past. And that's my royalty to them because I just can't. I can't afford royalties now.
The drawings are amazing in them, by the way. I want to ask one more because I feel like I'm asking too much here. How do you hold auditions? Is it like you sitting there as a band member and like you're holding auditions for these drawers to come up and you end up picking like the bassist, the drummer? How's that work?
Lame, cool.
That's a good question. Oh.
It's another
Sorry,
one.
guys.
I got 2 good questions today. Mark them down.
So when it comes to picking the talent, so back in the day, like I said, 2011, when I found Kim Jacinto, the guy who ended up, being a superstar for Marvel, and Jimbo Salgado, the way I started working with them was just to know people. My best friend in college, his brother happened to be an inker, and he was Filipino. Those 2 things are important because he ended up inking for Marvel as a side job. But in the Philippines, in the 90s and early 2000s, comics were blowing up. So young artists were really into drawing comic books. So that connection right there, that Philippine connection of my best friend's brother being Filipino, knowing friends in the Philippines that wanted to jump over to the U.S. and draw comics in the U.S., I just asked, I said, hey, you have any friends? Show me their pages. Amazing artwork. Jimbo was the first one. He came on board. Once I got somebody as good as Jimbo to work with me, that rose the level, that rose the bar. So I was able to ask other artists of the same caliber, hey, look at what Jimbo's doing. He worked with me. We had a great deal. We put out a great product. Do you want to work with me? So that was the online version of the auditions, just me reaching out to them because I've seen their work through their Facebook pages or their DeviantArt pages, me chasing them down. Then when you go to the comic conventions where I'm sitting at a booth at New York Comic Con, artists will come by and they'll see my booth, they'll see the quality of the work, and they'll say, hey, you got work? Here, let me show you my portfolio. And I'll either give them tips or I'll say, let me get your card and let's work together in the future. Or I go down Artist Alley and shop. Say, man, this guy's great. you have time in your schedule, you want to work with me. And that's how I work with a lot of the artists that I work with.
Have some of the artists that you've worked with like changed your perception of some like your characters by like visualizing them differently than you might have thought in your own head when you're writing them?
Yeah, absolutely. The biggest contribution I think the artists have, besides the visualizations of the characters, because that really comes through in the conceptual stuff when they're showing me head sketches of the characters, and I'll go back and forth and we'll tweak the look of the character. And a lot of times they'll offer me something completely different than I was asking for. And I'm like, I love it. That's great. But where that really comes to fruition is on the page in the storytelling. So the great thing about a good comic book artist is not just the ability to draw a really cool or pretty looking picture. It's the ability to tell a story, to have the character emote. If a comic book writer is like a screenwriter, then the comic book artist is like the director and the actor, because he's got to make those characters' faces emote and react. So a lot of times the artist will interpret the words that I've written on the page differently than I intended. Sometimes they do it on purpose. Sometimes they're like, this is iffy, John. I'm gonna spice this up. I've had Jamar in particular in recent memory in issues 5 and 6. Jamar has had the ability to emote a character's reaction so well that I removed all the speech bubbles from the page. I had no need for dialogue because the art is that good. So that's how an artist can influence the writer and the publisher in the same way.
Yeah. Does it ever go the other way where you have a specific image and they're just not quite getting it, and they're kind of being stubborn with how they think it should be, and you're just like, nah, dude?
I think what Eric's asking, did the image suck so much you had to add thought bubbles?
Yeah, it's nothing but bubbles and a guy behind it.
Sort of. So there was this one page where Kid Prodigy.
Awesome character, by the way. Awesome character.
Thanks, man.
I gotta throw
Kid Prodigy in a jail cell, and I'm like, how does he have a silent conversation with an invisible woman? Because that's what happens. Etheria is like a ghost, right? So she comes into the jail cell, and they don't want
plenty
the
of them
cameras to know that she.
I've had plenty of them.
Invisible girlfriends.
Yeah.
Super hot though.
The conversations only last a minute and a half. If you get what I'm saying.
That's awesome.
Terrible.
Different type of magazine, Scott. Different type of magazine.
Sorry.
So the artist just wasn't getting, well, how do I have this character communicate to an invisible person, and how do I draw this? He just wasn't getting it on the page, and he was trying and trying, and I said, you know what? I'm going to draw stick figures, and I'm going to have red pen and black, and then I'm going to scan it and send it to you. And there's been a couple of times when I'll just say my words probably weren't clear enough, or my concept wasn't clear enough, and the artist just couldn't get it. So I had to do stick figures. And once I do that, we call them thumbnails in the industry. I'll do thumbnails of a page. I'll send it over to the artist, and they're like, got it, and they fix it. There was one gorgeous spread in issue number 1 of this giant creature, like Galactus style in space, made of this rock. It's like an Earth creature out in space that the character Sovereign, who's sort of like a Superman character, just was being held in his hand by the giant creature and burst through his fingers. I made Jimbo take a 2-page spread, incredibly detailed work, a 2-page, and I made him draw it 3 times because he wasn't getting it, and I felt terrible about that. Yeah. But at the end of the day, it's got to serve the story, and he ended up knocking it out of the park in the end.
Good. Yeah,
Great question.
Really cool.
We all have our. I know for me personally, like with reading comic books growing up and just watching all the animated series and stuff like that, and I can imagine like if I were to create something, like I would be heavily influenced by Batman. He's just always been my favorite. Where do you get your influences for your characters? Like, how do you come up, like, where's the inspiration for creating these?
So originally, let's just take Jaded for a second, because I have other comics too, but I'm going to take Jaded to specifically address that question first. So Jaded initially was supposed to be a satire on people who are perceived to be heroes today, and superheroes that we all know and love. So I was purposely mixing a Batman character with like a soldier character. I was purposely mixing a Superman character with a policeman type of personality. I was specifically doing that. So those characters all came out. So Kid Prodigy was a version of Spider-Man. Etheria was a version of Invisible Woman. Devlin was a version of Batman, and Sovereign was a version of Superman. Oh, and Grady was a version of Flash. But they quickly evolved after that first concept. Just visually alone, they quickly evolved into something more. So I started to draw inspiration from a little bit of self-reflection on what my bad attitudes were, because the name of the book is Jaded. And I felt like I had a jaded personality, especially from deployment and some of the things that I seen when I was deployed, and thinking about what makes a hero and why do people say thank you for your service, or just because they see you in uniform, they don't know if you're a good person or not. You know, I struggle with that a lot. I struggle being, you know, labeled a hero just because I wore a uniform. That bothered me because I just felt like I didn't deserve it. So I would take some of my character flaws and put them in each of the characters. And so I drew inspiration from my own flaws, and I kind of use it as a catharsis, as almost a therapy of how somebody with flaws can still be a good person if they work through them. And that's what each jaded character represents, a flawed version of either my or people that are close to me personality, and how can they work through them through adversity. I thought that was important to talk about in comics, at least. And then in terms of inspiration for other non-related superhero characters, Everhounds, I love doing Everhounds. The inspiration for the characters was just people that I knew, or personalities that I knew in daily life. People that I saw, you know what, I like to take that personality from a coworker who's just a larger-than-life personality, really funny guy, and turn him into a giant robot, half man, and just roll with it, see what that's like. And then sometimes just out of nowhere, so I guess just from the inner psyche, just come up with something. But for the most part, it's either people that I know, or, you know, think about what I'm trying to say, archetypes, and work with that.
Kid Prodigy, who honestly, all 4 stories, his story to me was the most fucked up. And it's ironic how you made the kid story the most fucked up. And that was when I was most into. Like, I was like, holy shit. Did you play Sega Genesis growing up?
I did.
He reminded me of Kid Chameleon. Do you remember that game? Is that relevant?
No,
no. Okay.
It's not. But somebody told me, was it Nickelodeon or Cartoon Network? There's a character on Cartoon Network that has the same style helmet that I had no idea about. So I don't know Kid Chameleon, and I don't know this other kid character in Cartoon Network that has a similar helmet. But does Kid Chameleon have a similar outfit?
No, what Kid Chameleon was, he was like, it was a rare game in Genesis, and he was just a normal kid, but he like put on different outfits every level he was in. So it has nothing to do with like a rip-off. It just, I don't know, it brought me back to like an old Sega video game. But I will say, the way that you started off the comics with a couple of things in the cells, you know what it reminded me of? Twisted Metal Black for PS2. It had a Twisted Metal feel to it, which I really liked. It was like
I remember Twisted Metal too, but I don't remember Cells. What happened with Cells in that game?
Well, like they would start off in Twisted Metal Black. You'd start off, you pick a character, and it'd start off with the beginning of their story. And like a lot of them were in a jail cell or a psychiatric ward, and it would be like 5 years I've been in here, and then it would show like clips of the backstory, and you'd have to defeat the levels to get the middle story and then the end story. So it kind of it brought me to like a dark Twisted Metal, which I enjoy, which I thought it was really cool, man.
So it also jumped around in time like that?
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to look that up. I have a Sega Genesis. I like to collect old games. I'm going to have to look that one up.
Yeah, you could YouTube Twisted Metal Black stories. They're fucked up, but they're great. They're really great.
Well, I like a fucked up story. I like a good fucked up story.
Yeah.
When you're creating a new character in the comic book world, where's the fine line between someone saying, you know, that one's very similar to one that I just created? And if the person's not well known, what is that type of side of the industry like? Because I'm sure there's millions of different characters from people.
Yeah, so are you asking like if I feel like I've seen something out there that reminds me of something that I did, or the other way around?
Yeah, or anyway, either way. Like, what is it like? Like comedians stealing each other's jokes.
Yeah, I'll tell you, the one that shocked me the most was I'm a big comic guy and a big Garth Ennis fan, but I had never read the series The Boys. My cousin texted me out of the blue last year when The Boys came out, and he goes, yo, they stole your idea on Amazon. It's a show called The Boys. I'm like, first of all, they didn't steal my idea. That's a Garth Ennis comic I never got around to reading, but I'll check it out. Holy shit. The Boys is like, what if Jaded was fucking good? What if Jaded was like the best thing in the world?
Yeah.
I'm sitting there crying like this is an ultimate version of my story. You know, or an alternate version of my story done like so much better than me because I worship at that guy's feet. He's a great writer. But, you know, I know that I wasn't influenced by it, and I think other people might think it would be, but it doesn't matter to me. I was able to enjoy that story completely top to bottom. I went out and I read the graphic novel, loved it, and I was able to appreciate the similarities while being able to realize that my book is really totally different. It's just conceptually similar. I think that's what you're talking about. There's so many people that, whether you steal each other's stuff on purpose like comedians, or whether it's just concepts that are similar, as long as it's unique and it's got a signature of your own, I don't think anybody's coming after anybody, especially not in the comic book industry. Think about Marvel and DC. Hawkeye, Green Arrow, Red Tornado, Vision. They're the same characters on two sides, and the list goes on and on in those big two comic series. In the comics world, it's fair game.
Yeah, every one of those is like mirror of everyone. It's like Batman, Captain America, Superman, Captain Marvel, like same thing, you know?
Yeah, and then when you think back in, what year was it? I want to say 2010, maybe 2009. If you're into comics, even if you're not, you know the stories because you've heard of Red Hood. I'm sure everybody here has heard of Red Hood. And you've heard of Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
They're both sidekicks that were long dead, that were thought to never be able to be revived, that showed up in comics 2 months apart at the same time, and both as bad guys, and both secret. Nobody knew who they were, and then psych reveal it's your long lost
sidekick, partner, friend, everything. Yeah.
Both Judd Winnick for Red Hood, great, outstanding writer. His name is Ed Brubaker for Winter Soldier. They created those characters. They didn't know anything. Maybe they were hanging out after a Comic-Con drinking a beer. Maybe they were shopping stores and they were drunk and they had no idea they did it. Who knows? The point is, we enjoy their stories. They're similar, but they're different enough, and they have enough of a signature that everybody can enjoy both.
How is there any comic thing turned, like DC or Marvel, turned to a movie? One that you think they fucked up completely, and two you think gets a bad rap that actually is better than a lot of the comic fans or Marvel fans give, is better than they'd give credit for?
I think Halle Berry's Catwoman is underrated. That is a piece of fine art.
Really?
No,
that was actually really well done.
That was terrible.
I thought it was good.
I was just fucking kidding. And to each his own. I mean, there are people that the basketball scene. So I collect every comic book movie that I can get on Blu-ray, no matter how bad it is, right? So I got Dolph Lundgren's Punisher. I got Howard the Duck. I collect everything.
Howard the Duck is a classic. We don't talk bad about Howard the Duck on this show.
That's a fun watch, though. I couldn't even hate watch Catwoman. It was so bad I couldn't even.
Who was Howard the Duck? Corey, or was it who fucking played him? Corey. Was that the same guy? Corey Feldman? No, it wasn't.
No.
Oh, that's gonna bother me.
I can see why you could, with the raspy voice, why you might think that.
So with your comics,
but dude, you really like Catwoman?
I didn't think it was bad. I mean,
it's cool. I just want to hear more about it.
No, dude. Compared to some of I'm a huge Batman fan, and the shit that they've tried to throw together with all the DC movies, trying to catch up with everything Marvel with the Avengers, it was pathetic. Like, it was just awful. I mean,
which one?
What do you mean?
Batman versus Superman? Which one are you talking about?
Yeah, I'm just talking about all the DC movies in general.
Yeah.
After Nolan made his series with the trilogy, everybody knows what happened. Obviously, Heath Ledger died. They couldn't make any more going along those lines. So they kind of had to restart the whole thing. But in that time, they were making Iron Man. They were putting out Captain America. Like, they were building up, and they took the time to build up those things perfectly. And then with the boom of all the comic book movies and people, these studios seeing how much money that all these movies were making, it was like they tried to hop on these DC franchises, Aquaman, Wonder Woman, Batman. Oh, just fucking reboot Batman, do it again. Who cares? Throw this one, throw that one in. Fuck the story. Let's just make it comic booky, and they ruined them.
Right, I agree with you. And to answer the original question, I'm going to pick Batman versus Superman, not because it was a terrible movie. I can enjoy parts of that movie.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not my. The reason I will pick that one is one they really fucked up is because it was Frank Miller's Dark Knight. That is an amazing. Frank Miller's Dark Knight is an amazing story, and you don't half-ass that. You don't shove that into your movie. That is an amazing story, an amazing movie, and it's unique and it needs its own signature style. And they just they wedged it in and screwed it up. And now I don't think, aside from the animated one they did, they're never going to do that again, and we'll never get it. And that's why.
I also
it's funny though. Hold on, one more thing.
Oh, yeah,
it's funny though. I would argue that the majority of the animated Batman movies are a lot better than anything that's put out like live action.
Killing Joke was amazing.
Good stuff.
You watch Killing Joke. You watch. Even the Suicide Squad one, Assault on Arkham. That's one of the greatest.
That was awesome.
That's one of the greatest movies I've ever seen. When I first heard they were making a Suicide Squad, I was like, holy shit, if they make it like Assault on Arkham, that's going to be a fantastic movie. And then the piece of shit that they just put out was like, what the fuck is this?
They just regurgitated it out. It was awful. But James Gunn's version, if you've seen the trailer, that looks awesome. Or at least the behind the scenes.
I don't know.
Who do you think is the best character combined with actor that's ever been put out? Like Christian Bale.
I have an easy answer.
Okay, go on.
Not just because I'm a Captain America fan. He's top two, Batman and Captain America. They personified Cap.
Yeah.
In Chris Evans. He is perfect.
Good looking. You can't be that good looking and be Captain America.
That's the whole purpose of Captain America, you fool.
That's bullshit. I hate that.
He wasn't.
That's why I hate these movies, John.
He plays the character perfect.
No, that's why I hate these movies.
It's important that
Thor is the 10, and then he gets
Downey
a fucking hammer.
Robert Downey Jr. is Iron Man.
I don't know. I like these nerds.
For me personally, he's a close second.
All right. Well,
He's a close second. I think. Who?
No, I like the superheroes that like are the average Joes who become superheroes. It's just not believable when you got a great looking guy like Chris Evans. You could tag him in this too, bro. Great looking guy.
Scott, give me an ugly superhero.
He becomes Captain America. Fuck him. Like,
but it fits.
I can't be Captain America. I'm a 6.
In the he looks like he looks like Captain America in the comics though. And I will tell you, maybe Brian, you'll disagree with me. I don't think they've picked a single actor that has the look. The closest one they've come is Batfleck. He's the closest to the look of Batman. But they haven't brought the guy with the right size, with the right debonair look. Nobody. Pattinson is definitely not him.
No.
I haven't found anybody that personifies Batman from the comic yet.
Look,
I love the actors. I love Christian Bale as Batman.
Yeah.
But the look, they haven't nailed it. John Hamm would have been great.
Yeah, he would have. But I will agree with you on the Ben Affleck thing, because I think Ben Affleck touched into a part of the emotional side of Bruce Wayne and why he was doing what he was doing. I thought that was like the only bright spot in the Batman vs Superman, and like that aspect that he brought to the character, like just the way he was so brutal and he just didn't give a shit anymore, and like the fact that Gotham was the way it was, and he's just like pretty much, all right, fuck this, I'm just gonna beat the shit out of everybody and I'm gonna get my way and do what I need to do. And I thought he embodied that really well. And
I think he did too. Yeah. And I think Robert Pattinson could do that too. If you saw that trailer, he's beating the shit out of that dude.
Yeah,
he's the skinny little guy. He's like the runt of the litter in one of my formations. He's just a small. He doesn't look like Batman to me.
I really think it's gonna be like the Heath Ledger thing.
Batman actor.
It's definitely gonna be like a Heath Ledger thing where I think everybody's talking shit right now, and he's gonna do a good job.
I'm not talking shit about his acting.
Mm-hmm.
I think he has the potential to be the very best Batman from an acting perspective.
Mm-hmm.
he just doesn't look like Batman from the page.
Yeah.
And growing up with comics, it's hard for me to disassociate. I can appreciate the movie. I can love the movie.
Right.
But they just haven't done Batman himself yet.
You know
Captain
what?
America, spot on. Tony Stark, spot on.
My boy Val Kilmer does not get enough love as Batman. I'm sorry.
No,
That was the best. That was the best Batman movie. You're
What?
the line. I was scared of
Val
first,
fucking
only
killed
at first. That line was amazing. You're saying Ben Affleck brought out the emotion. Well, when Val Kilmer was laying there, I was scared at first, but only at first. And he's talking about his parents getting shot and the bat coming down in the caves. That was real emotional. And Tommy Lee Jones was a great Two-Face. Great Two-Face.
But Val Kilmer also said chicks dig the car. Batman would fucking say
And
chicks
Chris
dig
Evans
the car.
is a 10, and he's Captain America. Another problem I have. The new Superman, Kevin Costner, his father, the idiot's getting taken by a tornado, and he tells his son not to save him. You're Superman. Save him, you moron.
Yeah,
But
you
that's not the
don't
point,
listen to your
Scott.
dad and save him.
You actually watched the movie, or did you just like? What are you doing?
I got pissed in that scene, and I checked out. He looked at his son and goes, "Don't save me." Fuck you, it's a tornado. And, you know, the guy in Twister, the idiot holding the...
Oh, so that everybody sees that? Oh, your son's a freak? No.
I mean, you're Superman.
But that was the point. He was trying to show that the world wasn't ready for Superman yet, and he wasn't ready to do shit like that.
Yeah.
Well, enjoy
So he
your-
had to
I feel like you just
I
get
mean,
angry at like films and stuff, and you just like totally just like go off the rails on the actual movie or anything itself. Just judging people by their looks or by their actions of the moment.
No, I agree with him on that point, and here's why. Because Superman is not just all about brawn. If you make him just about his punching, it sucks, right? That's not good enough to be Superman.
Right.
He does have wit. And in that moment, his big bad guy, his Lex Luthor, was, how do I save my father without anybody seeing me? And he fucking failed.
Yeah.
He should have been able to figure it out. And he didn't.
Listen,
That's why that sucked. Because Superman, Christopher Reeve would have figured it out.
Yeah, here's the bottom line. Bill Paxton and Helen Hunt survived the fucking tornado, and they're in the middle of it. This guy could have figured out. This guy could have figured out how to save his goddamn father.
We gotta get a tornado specialist on this podcast next.
Yeah.
John, I have to ask, how much, and I mean this in the nicest way, how much nerd shit does your wife put up with before she says that's enough?
I'll tell you that she made it through Iron Man in 2 viewings. It took her 2 viewings to make it through Iron Man. We still haven't finished Captain America, the first one. That's as much as she's put up with.
Okay. So she didn't finish the movie.
She watched one Star Wars movie.
No.
Only
I've
one.
never seen
Which
Star
one?
Wars.
The first, A New Hope, first one.
A New Hope. That's it.
Another one that gets a
That's
bad
it.
rap, The Phantom Menace was a good movie. I'm just throwing it out there.
Darth Maul,
Got
that
like
scene
stir up trouble.
saved the whole movie.
Takes.
Darth Maul that weapon is the
They didn't-
name me a better weapon in a fucking movie than the double-edged lightsaber. You can't.
It's dope.
It's
dope.
the best weapon. That's my weapon of choice in an apocalypse. And Darth
Yeah, but
Maul
they
is my
didn't-
fucking friend.
But they didn't do enough with Darth Maul. He had so much more of a fucking role.
He had a great potential. And then they bring Count Dooku with that stupid fucking name like
Yeah.
that, with a cane lightsaber. There was nothing
How
close to the
unrealistic
two-edged
was that
lightsaber.
one?
But we did get to see Yoda in action in that though.
That was cool.
That was awesome. I
Yeah.
will say that was awesome.
What I
you-
love John.
okay.
Sorry, Eric. Really quick. I love your never-ending story reference. Like Kid
Yeah.
Prodigy one with the Falcor. This is actually the second time never-ending story, and your best friend over here, Brian, your comic buddy, hasn't seen never-ending story.
I still haven't seen it yet.
This fucking day.
I still never watched it.
I don't think you should, man. It doesn't hold up. Like, if you love it when you were a kid, you can enjoy it. I think it's too late, brother. Don't do it.
Yeah,
I want
I'm
to throw out
probably
the
too-
appreciation.
Like,
I want to throw out the appreciation factor that you threw that in your dialogue, though.
Yeah, no problem, man. I love that movie.
It's phenomenal. Eric, you had a question. Sorry.
I was going to ask if you sit there specifically to make it look like you have Batman ears.
No,
That
why?
product,
How am I doing
that product in the back, I can't. As you sit there, sit perfectly straight up. A little bit more to the other way. Sit directly in the middle. I can't not see
Yeah,
it.
there it is.
That's all that I
Oh,
see. I've seen that.
Yeah,
comic
yeah,
books.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I did that on
Look at
purpose.
that. I can't not see
Yeah.
it.
I did that on purpose. Now I can't not see it either. I'm not moving either.
I'm good, man. I'm out of questions. Anybody else have any? Dan, Brian, Eric?
That's the one I meant to ask about an hour ago.
All
But
good.
yeah.
All good, man. John, thanks for coming on. Tell us where we could get your comic books at.
All right,
Like,
so
Disney site.
if you just go to Backer Kit and you look up Jaded or Jaded graphic novels, you should be able to find it and look at the store. It's called a pre-order store, but I really have everything in hand, and I'm able to ship it out to you. So we've got the Jaded graphic novel. It's got all 6 issues. We've got Wordsmith, which is a one-shot about a poet who learns that his poetry is the fucking magic and magic spells, and he makes people explode with it by accident. And let's see, here's Everhounds. You can also get that there. Everhounds is like a sci-fi futuristic time travel book. You can also get there some versions of Jaded that you can only get through Backer Kit. You can't get it at conventions. You can't get it at comic shops. Because I'm in comic shops all over the Northeast. But I've got these variants. I've got this Etheria variant here. And I had a really awesome cosplayer named Janet in cosplay do an actual costume version of Etheria, and you can get that version on the Backer Kit too. So we'll put the link in the video.
What stores are you in the Northeast? Like, if you you're in New York, right?
Oh man, yeah, Zombie Planet in Albany, man, Alterniverse in Poughkeepsie, Mega Brain Comics. I'll shout them out in Hyde Park. All the ones that were in New York City are already gone by now. All the ones that are in the Bronx are gone by now. So outside of those few comic shops, maybe 6 or 8 left in the Northeast, the only way to get them right now is direct to the consumer from me, the publisher.
Awesome, man. So, John, thanks for coming on. Check out Iron Age Comics. Even if you're not into comics, I'm not a huge comic guy. I read them all. They are fucking cool. The drawings are awesome. They'll bring you back to some, if you're into Twisted Metal and shit like that, they'll bring you back into that stuff, the evil darkness, which I like, which is kind of sick in the head, but it is what it is. Eric's car's ruined because of DoorDash, and he spilled soup. That's another funny story. Yo, man, thanks a lot for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man.
You're welcome, guys. Thanks for inviting me.